Hey, Hawkeye fans, Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, Tyler Tachman, Des Moines Register. Tyler, lots to talk about today. Hawkeye football, 6-1, ranked. Seems to be a national topic. But hope you're feeling well. I know you're still on the injury shelf, but or illness shelf. What do you want to call it? Like, what do you want to describe this as?
I don't know.
It's not the DL because you're still working, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm all good. I'm basically what I guess I'm on a usual kind of list of just
Are you on a
being.
pitch count?
No, I'm not on the
No,
pitch.
okay.
No, no. I just said I think there's probably a usual list I'm on for just my personality and stuff. So
Oh,
not related to
a blank list? Okay.
yeah, not related to any sickness. So
Okay. Well, Kirk Ferentz used that word that we're not saying like late in the presser today, and you tweeted it about LaShawn Williams. Oh, I thought that's who you were talking about.
oh no.
Okay, not that kind of
Maybe not.
list. Okay. Okay.
I don't know what's going on.
Anyway, let's dive into Hawkeye football talk. We're going to talk about what Kirk Ferentz said about the pecking order at quarterback as we go here. That'll be our second topic. But first, Tyler, the Hawkeyes are 6-1, but I would say this might be the most banged up they've been all year going into a game, and they're facing a Minnesota team coming off its off week. It's bye week, if you will. Hawkeyes lose Erick All for the season now with a torn ACL in his right knee. Y.A. Black, I'm not expecting to play on Saturday after he suffered what looked like a shoulder injury, probably. It looked like his arm got kind of like slammed or pinned to the turf, and then it was on the Jay Higgins fumble. He kind of it was kind of dangling. I don't know if it was right or left. I can't remember, but anyway, someone said he was in a sling after the game too. So not good for a defensive line that's still waiting for Noah Shannon to come back. Deshaun Lee maybe comes back, but that didn't sound great. TJ Hall definitely out, so you can't lose Cooper DeJean or Jamari Harris. Joe Evans was on a snap count the other day, only played 27. He said he barely could go. So the D-line is really banged up for starters. Let's start there, I guess. D-line, very thin. Might have to have Logan Lee and Aaron Graves go the distance.
I guess from a D-line perspective, this is a group that's been kind of the last 2 weeks has been gaining some steam. It feels like they broke out against Purdue, against Wisconsin. It was another really good performance. Now they're kind of dealing with injuries of their own, but the bye week cannot come fast enough for Iowa. This season has just been chaotic from the very beginning, from the gambling stuff where you didn't know who was going to be out or whatever. And then just all the injuries they've had to endure, whether that be Erick All, Luke Lachey, Cade McNamara, Caleb Johnson, Jazz Patterson, a lot of them on the offensive end, also been, some on the defensive end as well. But it's just felt like a chaotic season. And now coming off this huge win against Wisconsin, you just can't have a letdown against Minnesota. I think you just need to get through this game any way possible, which is basically what they've been doing the last since Cade got hurt, basically. So you need to find that blueprint again and then get to the bye week where it feels like you can take a little bit of a breath, because it feels like there's not really been just a chance for Iowa to kind of step back and take a breath since that Penn State loss, where ever since then it just feels like things have kind of been rolling at 10 times speed. So I think you get past Minnesota however you can, then you try to use the bye week to kind of reset, get the guys healthy that you can, and move forward from there. But yeah, the bye week feels like it can't get here soon enough for Iowa.
Yeah, it would be perfect if it was this week, and then they get Minnesota after the bye, because then you also get more time for Noah Shannon, but that's a different conversation. Yeah, totally agree, Tyler. This is it's been a high wire act pretty much the last 12 quarters. I mean, think about, Cade McNamara hurt in the first quarter against Michigan State, and somehow they've emerged out of that with a 3-0 mark. I mean, if you told either of us that when Cade McNamara is basically you could tell he probably injured his left knee pretty seriously in that moment, and that Iowa would somehow go 3-1. Like, you probably would have said, "Oh wow, Deacon Hill probably lit it up on," and no, he did not. So, yeah, very crazy. Yeah, let's stick with the D line. I know I'm kind of burying the lead here with tight end, but it, let's start with the healthy guys. Ethan Hurkett healthy, Deontay Craig healthy. Kirk Ferentz saying maybe he could slide inside a little bit. Deontay could, that he's done that before. Obviously, that's what they did with Lucas Van Ness last year, where he flexed inside and out. Maybe they need Deontay Craig to play some inside snaps this week, which would elevate Hurkett, elevate Max Llewellyn. Joe Evans. I mean, he said he had an injury flare up, like I think something that had been bothering him, like really flared up out of the Purdue game. And so he didn't practice last week. It was a game time decision at Wisconsin, did play, but I didn't get a real sense of how close to full health he is, but he's another guy that needs that off week. Same with Mason Richmond. I know I'm flipping around here, but that's a guy that's clearly playing through, the calf bruise that he suffered in practice a few weeks ago at the hands of Bo Stevens' knee. And so everybody's just trying to get through this game. And so it's dicey. Logan Lee, Aaron Graves, Jeremiah Pittman would be their third D tackle, I'm assuming. I just don't think – I would be shocked if Y.A. Black plays. Sounds like maybe he would be able to come back for Northwestern at least. So, yeah, I think they just need to get him through this one without him. Kirk Ferentz didn't rule him out, but I'd be surprised if he plays. So that's pretty much it on the D-line. I mean, maybe we see Ontario Thompson. That could be a possibility.
Maybe too Brian Allen. He was a guy that, depending on how things are reshuffled, he played really well in that Kids Day at Kinnick, and Kirk Ferentz kind of downplayed it a little bit, saying that, the lights are bright, he shows up. But with the guys that are out, if they reshuffle, maybe he's a guy that gets some action.
Yeah, I like that. Good call there. And then, in the secondary, all the starters look great. So as long as you don't get any injuries there, you're good. Beyond that, Cohen Entringer was actually the kind of their dime guy at Wisconsin for a handful of snaps, with Deshaun Lee and TJ Hall out. So hopefully Lee, I'm guessing that Iowa is hoping like Lee can maybe be kind of in that emergency situation, sort of like Nick DeYoung was this past week. Could have played, didn't. They went the whole way with the O-line, but maybe that's the type of thing we're thinking about here. But let's flip to tight end now, Tyler, because the injuries there, about as bad as you possibly can imagine. Erick All out for the season. Luke Lachey, maybe back for a bowl game. That was something they said on the broadcast. I checked into it. Yes. His doctors say he should be back in December if all goes well. Not December 2nd, I don't think, for a potential Big Ten title game, but a bowl game, which would be awesome. I mean, and it's cool that Luke Lachey is shooting for that because, if I was playing, let's say I was like 10-3 and playing in the Outback Bowl or something, that would be a nice lift to have him back for that game, So, but Erick All obviously out. Steve Stylianos becomes your first tight end. Crazy since he played 17 total snaps last year. And then Addison Ostrengo, does he play this week? It sounds like he had a light practice today. I think that would be huge if he could come back this week. And here we are relying on, Addison Ostrengo to help save the day on offense. That's just where we are.
And I feel for Erick All first and foremost, because just before that game, when we talked to him on Zoom, he was talking about how he had back surgery last season that kept him out for a lot of the year. And he was saying that he couldn't even sit in a chair because the back pain was so bad. And then for him to be able to come off of that, he obviously transfers from Michigan to Iowa, but to be able to have the season that he had up to that point was remarkable. And to see him go down with that injury was tough to see. But now I'm interested to see what that dynamic is, because we know how much Iowa relies on the tight ends. and specifically on Erick All and Luke Lachey before now they've both gotten hurt. But does that change the dynamic of Deacon Hill throwing to them? Is he still going to rely heavily on them, even though they're not as established? I mean, will we see the receivers get more involved? Because I think we've talked about so much about the receivers and their involvement, and now I feel like that's even more important, because when you're down so thin in your depth in tight ends, there's only so many tight ends you can throw to. The wide receivers group is healthy and capable. I think
they're healthy.
They've been hampered, one, by just not getting opportunities, but also not taking advantage of it when they do get their opportunities. So like I said, it's been a continuing storyline of what does the wide receiver group look like, but here's just a massive opportunity for them to really help out the offense.
Yeah, credit to Seth Anderson. He showed up today for availability to speak for the wide receivers, and he always has a smile on his face, but you could tell, it was, and said the company line about doing what it takes to win and whatnot, but you can tell it's, basically said we can only go up from here, is what he said, and I put that in my article. So he's right, obviously. I mean, Iowa has 2 wide receiver catches for 13 yards over the past 2 weeks. So yeah, Deacon Hill probably going to have to lean in that direction. And then the great news is, if there is any great news, is that the running back room is as healthy as it's been now since week 2, because Jazz Patterson practicing fully, in addition to Caleb Johnson, who obviously came back against Purdue, and then Leishon Williams, moves to the 1 line at running back. And I know you wrote about him today, Tyler, but he sounds like a number 1 running back. He's so confident. He's like, talking about today, like how, they want to make it hard for opponents to tackle them and kind of, give out their own punishment. And so that's how he runs. And that's how it looked like he ran Saturday at Wisconsin.
And talk about just like the excitement about the future of that room, because Caleb Johnson is young, Jazz Patterson is young, and we saw what he could do in that Iowa State game, but he's dealt with injuries. Then also Kamari Moulton and Terrell Washington Jr., 2 guys that have kind of been thrown into the mix really early as true freshmen, getting some meaningful experience that probably we didn't expect them necessarily to get. But Kamari Moulton had 2 touchdowns against Western Michigan. He looks like a guy that's capable. So it's not even of just like right now, Iowa's probably definitely their strongest group on the offense is their running back room, but also just like looking forward into the future, it looks bright for what a collective. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot of talent, guys that can do different things. So when you look into the future about what, can we grasp at straws of what to be excited for about Iowa's offense in the future, which is fleeting at this moment, but the running back room is something to be excited about, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree, and especially building off 200-yard game at Wisconsin. And if you take out the sacks, they on called runs, they rushed for over 220 yards the other day. So we'll get to some of PJ Fleck's comments about Iowa's run games, I think, in our 3rd segment. But let's talk about quarterbacks now. Tyler, I know you were streaming Kirk Ferentz's presser today, and obviously I was there as well. What did you make of what he said about the questions regarding Deacon Hill and Joe Labus?
First I'll say I don't know if people will like to hear this, but when you have a young guy like Deacon Hill, I think there's a certain benefit that you have when you give him stability, and that saying that you're going to be the guy and that he's not constantly looking over his shoulder and feeling like every mistake he makes here or there, he might be pulled. I think there's a benefit in that, and it's pretty clear that that's the strategy Iowa is going with, of saying Deacon is the guy. We're not changing from that. On the other side of things, when you have a passing, completion percentage in the 30s like he does, there's a real argument for, hey, what could Joe Labus give us? And I think that we've seen enough of Deacon Hill to at least make that a conversation of what would a Joe Labus-led offense look like. It doesn't seem like Kirk Ferentz is going away from Deacon Hill, though. That just seems kind of like what he is confident in right now. One thing I would like to see is we've seen Deacon Hill's big arm, but it felt like a lot of the passes against Wisconsin were like, if they were caught, they were like no gain or like 1 yard gain or just like really short. Like at least try to maybe get some intermediate passes, ones that can get you 8 yards and make it a 2nd and short or get a first down. Because some of the passing plays that they've been doing, even if they're caught, there was one that Nico Ragaini dropped, but even if he had caught it, it would have been a gain of 0 or 1. You got to at least go a little bit more vertical. And if defenses are going to be stacking the box, which is what Minnesota will probably be doing, and it's smart on them for probably any team the rest of the season to try to stop Iowa in the run, is make Deacon Hill beat you. But if that's going to be the case, I think Deacon Hill, he can determine the ceiling of this team, because I think right now they are what they are, and that's scraping by because of really good defense and special teams. And they can still make it to the Big Ten championship by doing that. But if they want to take the next step and like kind of raise their level as a team, I think Deacon Hill is the one that will decide that.
Yeah, rewatching the game, a couple things stood out. Number one, Deacon continues to be better off play action, not sitting in the pocket. So I think if they could get Ostrenga back, that would help in the bootleg game. Ostrenga's a little bit more athletic, former baseball player than Stylianos. I mean, right now they really don't have losing All really hurts in that regard, because you had 2 athletic tight ends in Lachey and All. Now you're down to kind of the grinders. Ostrenga is the closest thing they've got to an athletic guy. So hopefully he can come back and give them some of that bootleg game that they were missing with McNamara, even because he couldn't move. And then, number 2, yeah, they just didn't they didn't give up on Deacon Hill. They just went into hey, we're not going to commit any turnovers the rest of the game against Wisconsin. The only way we get beat is if we turn it over. That was, I know this is your first year on the beat, Tyler, but we've seen this time and time again with Kirk. They will lock box these leads. They will do everything in their power to not give the game away. And they're happy to pin it on the defense and on their punter. And that's exactly what they did the other day. So I don't think they didn't trust Deacon Hill. I just think they just took every precaution necessary to protect that lead. So I don't want to say they're going to be way better in the passing game this week, but I feel like there's going to be, I think you're going to see something in the passing game this week. Minnesota's defense has not been great, and they're going to, like you said, they're going to have to throw the ball. They're going to have to prove that they can throw the ball to the wide receivers. And if we're talking about who that could be, I got to think I think Nico Ragaini is still your best bet. He's a veteran. He can almost be like a tight end, in the slot, cutting across the middle, making some tough catches. So I think that's probably the way to go. Here, let me read the comment from Kirk Ferentz today. There's a couple questions surrounding this, but Scott Dr. asked, how far would you say that Joe Labus, blah, 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 the separation is between the two of Hill and Labus? So Kirk said this: I don't know that I want to put a gauge on it. Game action determines everything. Eventually, I'll say this. I know that discussion floated out there last year. I hate to say this in a negative way, but I think we all saw when Petrus got knocked out, we saw maybe why we were playing Petrus. So basically said, as I wrote in my column, kind of be careful what you wish for. Like, they're the ones that see practice. They believe that Deacon Hill still gives them the best chance to win. And that was the case with Petrus last year. Padilla comes into the Ohio State game, fumbles his first snap, throws an interception 2 snaps later. Was not basically benching the starter instantly backfired. But I understand the argument of wanting to see what Joe has in store too. So what did you make of those comments that I just read?
I think it's interesting because the kind of unknown variable in all this is like practice. Like, we don't see what happens behind those closed doors. So maybe Deacon Hill looks, leaps and bounds better than Joe Labus. We don't know. We haven't really seen Joe Labus at all since that bowl game. No, I think I agree that your assessment of what Iowa needed to do against Wisconsin on the road, that, hey, they don't want Deacon Hill to make mistakes. They're going to trust the run, all that. But my question becomes more of like, moving forward, if teams put, 9 guys in the box or however it may be, and they're going to sell out to stop the run, they're going to say, if someone's going to beat us, it's going to be Deacon Hill. Is he going to be able to beat them? Because I don't know if we've seen enough. Like, there's been small glimpses of it. But if I were a defense, if I was a D coordinator, that's what I would do against Iowa. I would say LaShawn Williams and Caleb Johnson and Jazz Patterson are not going to beat us no matter what. Let's have this guy that is only started a handful of games in college, that has not been accurate, that has not been efficient. Let's make him beat us. And then if he does, that's how it is. But I feel like that's sort of, and that also goes into, like I was saying, you can start the offense kind of can start playing off each other if Deacon at least shows if he shows he can do it on a more consistent basis. He doesn't need to be slinging the ball around the field 40 times, but if he can do it on a more consistent basis, then that's gonna make defenses stay honest. That'll open up running game, play action, all that. So I think it's not about being great. It's just about showing being great in small doses, so the offense or the defense knows that it's possible.
We will definitely get into the Minnesota matchup in our Hawk Central radio show on Wednesday night for sure. But let's transition now off your comments there, Tyler, into what PJ Fleck had to say about exactly that, stacking the box against Iowa and what Iowa does that produces wins. PJ Fleck 0-7 all time against Kirk Ferentz, 0-1 at Western Michigan, 0-6 at Minnesota. Minnesota's lost in very painful, close ways under Fleck. Lost by 7 in 2017 in their first matchup, 17-10 at Kinnick. And then, of course, 2019, they come in here unbeaten. Iowa beats them 23-19. 2 years ago, they came into Kinnick and basically doubled Iowa in yardage, I think. But Iowa won that game somehow, 27-22. And then, of course, last year, the 13-10 win where Iowa somehow pulled that one out of thin air. Lost Sam Laporta in that game. Speaking of tight end injuries, and Jack Campbell and company created 2 fourth quarter turnovers to win, and Mo Ibrahim was running crazy on them. So Iowa has found a way. Here's what PJ Fleck said about Iowa. He got to watch the Wisconsin game. Minnesota was on bye last week, and he kind of was marveling at a couple things. The system that Iowa runs. Basically said it's about how you go through a game and go win games based on your formula to win games. And I don't think there's a team that does it better than Iowa. They understand who they are more than most teams. They stick to who they are more than most teams, and they beat you in every area. And then later, talking about the run game, I felt like this was a good example for people to watch football to understand, because you see the loaded boxes. But you also see Iowa with, double tight ends and maybe even a third tight end or a fullback. And Fleck explaining that every time you add bodies to the line of scrimmage, you're adding gaps through which Iowa can run the football. And here's what he said about trying to defend that type of running attack, which Wisconsin got burned by with an 82-yard run by LaShawn Williams. Purdue got burned by 67-yard run, Caleb Johnson. Iowa State, 59-yard run, Jazzy and Patterson. The formula was basically the same every time. It was loaded box, guy explodes through, all of a sudden, wide open space, right? He says this: they make you fit it perfectly every single time because the backs are really patient. You fit the gap and your eyes get in the wrong spot one time, they'll add a lot of people where every gap matters. And then they'll do some movements, some shifts, some motions. You do that, and one guy gets his eyes out of the gap, it's a touchdown, because you're not going to sit there and play them in cover 2. You've got to get people down in the box to be in those gaps, or you're going to be giving up 8 or 9 yards of carry. That's when some guy doesn't have his eyes in the right spot, and you take the cheese somewhere and it's coming out for 70. And they just do it over and over and over and over and over. And eventually their defense is so good that even if they score one touchdown, that's going to be good enough to beat you. What do you make of those comments?
Yeah, it sounds like a guy that's 0-7 against Iowa. No, yeah, I mean, I think that's a good breakdown, and it's interesting that Minnesota is coming off of a bye because it feels like sort of the opposite end of where Iowa is. You have like a really depleted team that could use it badly, and then Minnesota coming off of it. But yeah, I think that's a good breakdown, and to be able to kind of link what Jazz Patterson, the run against Iowa State, but I think it also speaks to Iowa's offensive line in that the last 2 games they've strung together really strong performances. And early, throughout up to that point in the season, it felt like inconsistent, good performances where they played really well against Western Michigan and then not well against Penn State, who's a really good defense. But to string together what they've done against Purdue and then against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin, a team that prides themselves like Iowa on toughness and physicality, to be able to clearly be sort of the more physical and tough team, I think was pretty telling. So 2 performances really good strung together in a row from the O-line. It feels like they can gain confidence from kind of those tangible successes that they've seen. And so, it feels like them moving in the right direction obviously is a big deal, but also just because of the uncertainty at quarterback, to be able to lean on that run game more is really big.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk to Logan Jones today as well. He's always really insightful, really honest, and yeah, I feel like they're feeling pretty confident right now. I mean, they've taken what happened at Penn State and turned it into incremental progress, and that's kind of what Kirk Ferentz wanted to see. I thought Jones had a pretty good game the other day. Rusty Feth had probably his best game as a Hawkeye. Connor Colby continues to probably be their best lineman at right guard. And then Jennings Dunker, he's been pretty solid out there. I know Mason's struggling through that injury. Hopefully he can get healthy after the bye week. But obviously they're going to have to gut through this one a little bit. I feel like Iowa fans, and we'll talk about this probably more on the show tomorrow. I feel like there's more coming around on this team, kind of digging into defending this team rather than bashing the team. So I think that's there's still plenty of the bashing out there just with the offense where it is. But I kind of expect to see a pretty electric atmosphere Saturday at Kinnick. It's a stripe out. It's probably going to be dark as the second half progresses. This is a rivalry game, and their team needs to find a way. And I think the crowd's going to have to help if Iowa's going to win this game.
The crazy thing to think about right now, and this is getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but like Iowa has a realistic path to the college football playoff, which, given everything they've endured this season, is kind of wild to think about. And this is not saying that that's going to happen, or the chances of it are really slim, but Iowa has put itself in position to at least kind of continue to make its way into that conversation because they have one loss. Their schedule is not difficult at all. They're going to have to fight their way through the rest of the regular season. But if they win out in the regular season, which again is not a foregone conclusion, then you get to the Big Ten championship and you're going to be playing Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State. And the likelihood of beating one of those 3 teams is not high. But again, who knows we did not expect Iowa to look like this when we started the season. So who knows what they'll look like come December from, between now and December. Anything can happen in that game. And, that would kind of be like a play into the playoff, I guess, if Iowa still only has one loss. But I don't know. It's just, given everything that's gone on this season, it's just like kind of been a roller coaster. The fact that Iowa is where it is and like we can even kind of bring that up, I think is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very far-fetched, but definitely, it's plausible Iowa could win out, but it's, as we talked about on our post-game pod, it's not very possible, but it is possible they lose out as well. So every one of these games is going to be a struggle. I mean, Iowa opened, I think, as a 4-point favorite against a 3-3 Minnesota team at home. So that tells you that there's still not a lot of respect out there for Iowa, understandably so with the statistics. But obviously, this team continues to find a way. And I think after our conversation, Tyler, I'm more reinforced that this game means a ton, a ton, because you do get that finally chance to breathe after this. This is, as Kirk Ferentz said, an 8-game season, and then it's a 4-game season. And you think you're going to get healthier. You're not going to be healthy, but you're going to get healthier, and you're probably going to get Noah Shannon back for that Northwestern game. That's a perfect game to come back to, a team you can beat. And then you come home for 2 before you go to Nebraska. So the schedule sets up really nicely, but not this week. This is the one they got to win somehow.
And was it, because I don't think I'm imagining this, that Northwestern beat Minnesota, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is obviously a Minnesota team that is, beatable to say the least. But yeah, this is one that, I think they just got to do what they have done since Cade got hurt against Michigan State, and then you can go into the bye.
Absolutely. Good show, Tyler Tachman. Looking forward to talking to you tomorrow on our Hawk Central radio show. And, of course, we'll talk to you from Kinnick Stadium Saturday night with another YouTube post-game pod. Will the Hawkeyes be 7-1? That is very crazy to think about given all the injuries we discussed. For Tyler Tachman, this is Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register saying so long and talk to you soon.